Welcome to CD Rome, a new way to travel, explore, and enjoy the adventure while you drive. On this volume, we've asked a very special tour guide to lead us through the beautiful and celebrated Napa Valley. We'll follow a basic circle route around the 30-mile valley, visiting grape-growing districts that stretch from outside Napa City in the south to historic Calistoga up north, then back. So we'll help you to each region, but leave you to plot your own order of winery visits within those districts. Finally, we can't list all of the more than 225 wineries in the valley, so we encourage you to adventure on and to explore beyond our limits. But now, CD Rome is proud to present your special guide to Napa Valley and to the California wine country, a man of impeccable taste, great style, and good humor. David, please take us away.
Well, hello there. Welcome to the heart of California wine country. I'm David Hyde Pierce, your companion for this CD Rome tour of the Napa Valley, home to some of the world's greatest wines, wineries, and winemakers. The valley is also full of great stories, bigger-than-life characters, and some small but heroic grapes. So you do the driving, I'll make the introductions. Thanks for bringing me along. Now let's roam! Oh, one critical reminder. Since safety is no joking matter, please drive carefully and taste responsibly. Nothing is more important. And I'm in no position to be your designated driver. We start our Napa Valley tour here in the city of Paris. That's right, just off the Place de la Concorde, on the Rue de Rivoli, La Plume de ma Tante est sur la table. No, you didn't miss an off-ramp. We've just detoured through time to 1976, a turning point in modern California wine history. A British wine merchant, impressed with California's wines, has organized a little taste test at the Paris Hotel Intercontinental. Oh, let's be frank. What he's organized is one big publicity stunt. California versus France. Napa versus Bordeaux and Burgundy. An impromptu wine Olympics. It will be conducted before the International Press Corps. A blind tasting. No one will know which winery produced which bottle of wine. And the judges? All French. Yes, all Gaul. How audacious, the experts are muttering. How can California wines dare stand for such a comparison? How indeed? When French vintages literally define the world's wine standards? When millennia of French winemaking practice have produced nothing short of perfection? The grand poobahs of French wine tasting are not amused. They have promised no mercy. Now, the corks are pulled. The press, sated with complimentary champagne, crowds in closer. The experts clear their palates. Let the tastings begin! First, from the anonymous bottles of white wine. Well, finding these Californians is easy. You don't even have to taste. One sniff is enough. Smell this one, if you can. Almost no nose, nothing in the mouth. It's definitely Californian. Then, from a colleague, back to France. A good nose, fruity and elegant. Très complète. Next, they swirled, sniffed, and sipped the anonymous bottles of red wine. Oh, so tender. It's such a fine, balanced wine. It will open with much, charm. Mon Dieu, this wine, it shouts out the magnificence of France. It soars. It is certainly a Premier Grand Cru of Bordeaux. And so it went all afternoon. Definitely, certainly, unmistakably, oh my Dieu, it's undeniably French! No, the egg on those French faces is not caviar. The wine that was easy to identify as Californian for its weak bouquet, no nose, turned out to be a white Burgundy from France. In fact, the fruity and elegant wine, judged the best white, turned out to be a 1973 Chardonnay from Napa's Chateau Montelena. And what reminded one judge of the magnificence of France? It was a Napa Cabernet Sauvignon. The tender, balanced charmer, you guessed it, from Napa. The afternoon's top red was a 1973 Cabernet from Stag's Leap Wine Cellars. To the European wine community, the tasting results, what Time magazine called the Judgment of Paris, were received with all the favor of a great cosmic belch. Some of the French judges even tried to alter their scorecards. Too late! Virtually overnight, Napa Valley claimed a prominent place on the world wine map, and a reputation that becomes more deserved with each passing harvest. In truth, of course, it didn't happen overnight. That's not the nature of wine, or of wine regions. It could be said that the California wine country rose from the ashes of others, from the disasters and heartbreaks of generations of winemakers across the continent. Take the first American colony, in Jamestown. The North American newcomers tried to make wine from native grapes nearly 400 years ago. What a disappointment. It's a good thing we didn't have the Judgment of Paris in 1620.
Oh mon Dieu! Oh zut alors, it's very... It's musky and the bouquet, I don't know, it tastes like wet foxes. Ooh, the finish is very barnyard. I think I'm gonna be sick.
But American wine drinkers needed no help from French tasters to know that those early domestic efforts were simply not up to sniff. Eventually, European grapes were grafted to American vines, and the country's first commercially successful wine production gave pre-Civil War America sparkling Catawba. British journalists raved that it compared favorably to French champagne. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow wrote poems in its honor. There grows no vine by the haunted Rhine, by Danube or Guadalquivir, nor on island or cape that bears such a grape as grows by the beautiful river. And no, old Longfellow was not talking about the beautiful Napa River. Would you believe the Ohio? Indeed, were it not for diseases and pests wiping out the Catawba vineyards, and with them America's earliest wine country, well, we might be starting out our lovely little tour today in lovely Cincinnati. Imagine, instead of Chardonnay and cheese, Catawba und Schnitzel. Good character. Carneros. Let's begin our tour down valley, as the locals call it, south and west of the town of Napa in the lovely Carneros district. It's one of more than a dozen smaller wine regions within the greater Napa Valley wine region, also known as an appellation. No, don't look for coal miners' daughters here, not Appalachia. Let me try it again. Appellation. Appellations are regional growing areas with distinctively different soils, weather patterns, and exposure to sun. Little ones, like Carneros, are sub-appellations. In Carneros, the fog and cool breezes off San Pablo Bay create conditions familiar to French winemakers in Burgundy. One reason why grapes that do très bien over there, most notably Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, also do very well over here. Here, as in Burgundy, the soils tend to be shallow and dense, with heavy clay content. That's hard on grapevines that already are stressed by too many gloomy mornings, and not much thirst-quenching rainfall either. It's a tough neighborhood for a grape. But it turns out that in vineyards, as in life, tough conditions build character, or make you drop your leaves, one sure sign of a vine on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Such challenging conditions, including the coolest temperatures in the valley, slow down the ripening process and discourage grapes from even forming on the vines. Yields are relatively low, but those hearty little grapes that make it are especially intense and complex, bursting with rich fruit flavors. So now you know, one of the secret ingredients in the great wines of Carneros is character. You can sample some of the region's best by touring area wineries, most of them reachable off Highway 12, the main road linking Napa and Sonoma. Among the Carneros wineries are Acacia, on Las Amigas Road, occupying a modern California-style barn. Bouchain Vineyards on Buckley Station Road, a modern redwood facility on the site of a century-old winery. Its windswept hills are a bit out of the way, but the visit comes with a view and warm fires in the tasting room for those cool Carneros days. Carneros Creek on Dealey Lane, with a tasting room in the farmhouse. Tours of other area wineries, like Saintsbury on Los Carneros Avenue, are by appointment, but don't be shy about calling. Oh, but wait, there's more. It turns out that the same little grapes that are big heroes of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay wines also make champion sparkling wines, so the Carneros district has become a center for sparkling wine production in Napa Valley. This, of course, opens some truly wonderful touring and tasting treats. The Domaine Carneros Winery on Duhigg Road, for example, is one of the most beautiful this side of the Seine, from roadside rose bushes to hilltop grounds dominated by an elegant chateau. The estate is modeled after the 18th century French residence of its founders, the Taittinger Champagne family, and the view from the patio is very nice. Also architecturally intriguing is the Artesa Winery on Henry Road. It was built into a hill designed to blend with the surroundings. It features waterfalls and fountains. Formerly known as Cordonu Napa, Artesa's Spanish founders have been making sparkling wines for more than 150 years. And Domaine Chandon, the French makers of Dom Perignon champagne, own many of the vineyards rolling over these hillsides. Their winery and tasting room is further up the road, however. I'll let you know when we get a little closer. I promise. Volatilize your esters. By now you've probably noticed, an experienced, sophisticated wine taster stands apart from the crowd. The swirl, the swish, the thoughtful sip. Of course, it's the crowd that tries its best to stand away from the novice. The swirl, the slosh, the slip, the laundry. And which way did the crowds lean at your last winery stop? Well, no matter. For future reference, let me offer these tips. First, when served a glass of wine, reach for the stem and take it ever so gently in your fingers. That way, your hand won't warm the contents of the bowl, and your fingerprints won't spoil the view. Plus, and this is especially important, those wine snobs won't finger you as a rookie. Next, hold your wine glass up to the light, and then start talking like a weather forecaster. Brilliant! That's as good as it gets. Bright! It looks very good. Clear! That's merely okay. Hazy. That would be bad. Cloudy. Forget about it. Now, swirl the wine around. Careful, these next steps work only if the wine stays in the glass. It may be best to try this on a smooth tabletop. Hold the stem at the base between thumb and forefinger and slowly begin a slight circular motion, and yes, I'm still talking about wine. Experienced swirlers can do it in the air. It's all in the wrist, or it's all over the room. Either way, the swirling action agitates the wine, sometimes called volatilizing the esters. I have no idea what that means, but it helps release the pent-up aromas. It also sounds kind of sexy, don't you think? Hi there. Shall we volatilize our esters? Oh! Okay, it's not much of a pickup line. Before sniffing those esters, oh! First, the experienced wine taster takes note of one other condition apparent after a successful swirl, the so-called tears washing down the sides of the glass. If they recede quickly, the wine is thin. If the tears, sometimes also called legs, are more pronounced and slower to fall, then the wine has body. And for the record, thin is not so good, body is better. Now, smell the wine. Go ahead, stick your nose deep into the bowl of that glass. Now, of course, there can be some hazards here, too. The daughter of a prominent Napa winemaker did a fine imitation of a vacuum cleaner at one public tasting when she took in a tad more than esters as she sniffed her Cabernet. Neither her dignity nor her white suit was ever the same. Now, when you dip your nose into a glass of wine, you might expect to smell, well, wine. Try again. A rich, complex wine has a rich and complex fragrance, like a bouquet of mixed flowers. You might detect hints of oak, nuts, berries, citrus, vanilla, chocolate, even fresh-mown grass. If the bouquet evokes an association with lighted matches, it could be excess sulfur content, or you're too near the candelabras. Take your time and give your imagination free rein. It's all quite subjective. In the end, bouquet is in the proboscis of the inhaler. For example, one wine critic sniffed an otherwise popular Cabernet Sauvignon and described it as a blend of horse sweat and tide pools. Another found a white wine evoking hints of cat pee on a gooseberry bush. Okay. Now, you've done your weather report, you've swirled, you've examined the body, you've sniffed the esters. Ow! Finally, it's time to taste. To taste like the professionals, you can't be dainty. Forget polite. Don't be afraid to slurp and slosh. Get air into the mix. Swish it around in your mouth. Chew it. The key to tasting is making certain that all regions of your tongue get a chance to share the experience. You've got taste buds all over that tongue, different buds for different assignments. The ones in front respond to sweetness. The buds in the middle detect what is sour. And those buds in back make sure you know when bitter is in the recipe. Make sure they all get to register an opinion about the wine. Now, the point of a wine tasting, of course, is to taste, not to consume. Even wine tasting can be impaired by too much of a good thing. The pros taste and spit. That's right. Sip, savor, and patooey. That's how the pros keep their wits about them, not to mention their sober judgment. Now, you don't have to spit, but you can pour. That's right, taste, then pour what's left in your glass into the buckets provided by the winery tasting rooms. It's not only the accepted practice, but it extends your tasting sessions. You'll be able to keep judging wines, not to mention safely navigating streets and sidewalks of the wine country. It's also a good idea to take notes on the wines you like and note why you like them. Which brings us to the last element of wine judging, called, appropriately, the finish, or aftertaste. Good wine throws in a glorious parade of flavors and sensations that go on and on and on, even after the last sip exits over the back of the tongue. So, don't rush it. A great finish in wine, as in a great story, saves a few surprises to the very end. It could be unexpected hints of berries, or spices, or herbs, or fire engines. That would be Dalmatian wine. Okay, let's get on down the road. After all, we have only begun to finish. Getting warmer, Oak Knoll. Proceeding north from the town of Napa, up Highway 29, we enter almost immediately the Oak Knoll region. If you were a grape, the first thing you'd notice is, hey, it's getting warmer. Not dramatically, perhaps, but the waning influence of Mother Nature's fog makes a noticeable difference in the vineyards. That extra boost of solar heating welcomes a wider variety of grapes. For instance, say hello to some Merlot vines. Hello, Merle! You can also say hello to Bistro Don Giovanni. The popular dining spot on the highway just outside town is set among the grape rows of a vineyard, a Tuscan gateway to the valley. And what a garden is the Napa Valley. It's too bad America's first domestic wine promoter couldn't live to see it. Of course, that would be Thomas Jefferson. But in his day, alas, Napa Valley belonged to the King of Spain. Jefferson believed that, in their pursuit of happiness, Americans deserved their own wines, and could make them, as he put it, doubtless as good as anything in Europe. Well, you have to be an optimist to start a new country. But Jefferson, as usual, had the right idea. He once declared, along with independents, that good wine is a daily necessity. And as Secretary of State, Jefferson kept President Washington's state dinner table stocked with Burgundies and champagnes. Then, as the commander-in-chief himself, Jefferson acquired an extensive presidential wine cellar. Well, you never know who might drop in. Later, in political retirement, Jefferson advised Presidents Madison and Monroe on White House wine choices. Inexplicably, history books have long overlooked the fact that this giant among America's founding fathers was also the nation's first and foremost sommelier. Fittingly, here among the Oak Knoll vineyards, we can visit the Monticello Winery on Big Tree Road. If you can't find it, consult your pocket change and look for a visitor's center matching the back of your nickel. It's a striking replica of Jefferson's Monticello mansion. Other interesting stops in this district include the Andretti Winery of American race car legend Mario Andretti on Big Ranch Road, the big pumpkin-colored Trefethen Winery just off Highway 29 on Oak Knoll Avenue is the valley's second oldest. It features a 3-level gravity flow processing system. The small, low-tech Signorello Vineyards on Silverado Trail, where the barrel room serves as a tasting venue for visitors. And newcomer Dariush, also on Silverado Trail, bringing the legacy of ancient Persian winemakers to the valley. Persian wine, you say? Actually, Napa Valley, not to mention Bordeaux and Tuscany, owes much to the early Persians. They were the world's first wine masters, the first wine exporters. It's quite likely that every European-style wine vineyard in the Western world has some genetic link to the vineyards of the Darius kings. Unfortunately, the one secret they neglected to hand down to us is just how do we get wine stains out of a Persian rug? Codename Varietal. One of the most important figures in modern California wine history was, a spy. Before World War II, Frank Schoonmaker was an American wine writer and entrepreneur. Spy masters at the old OSS thought Frank's wine expertise gave him great cover, and within days of Pearl Harbor, he was in Europe posing as a wine merchant. There, while he talked the talk, mostly in neutral Spain about the sherry trade, he also passed along critical information about Nazi intelligence operations on the Iberian Peninsula. Who knows how much his spy work helped win the war? But what's absolutely certain is that his wine work back home helped make California the wine superpower that it is today. The secret, assuming you all have appropriate security clearances, was varietals. Frank was an early apostle of the varietal system. He wanted wines to be named for the variety of grapes used to make them. The Chardonnay grape makes a Chardonnay wine. Simple as that. It was not a popular suggestion at first. In the old days, most California wines were simply identified by their color, red or white, nothing fancy. Those wines were inconsistent blends of various grapes, the vineyard equivalent of the kitchen sink. Later, desperately seeking European chic, American producers changed their labels, though not their wines. Call it an early form of identity theft. They labeled their bottles Chablis or Burgundy or Chianti, names traditionally reserved for distinctive wines from those regions of France and Italy. But the California crowd bore no resemblance in bouquet, taste, or sophistication. Such frauds and imposters, as well as low-quality bulk producers, plunged California wine into the Dark Ages. Now, to be sure, there were some premium winemakers in California, even during those dark days. But after the war years, when retired spy Schoonmaker came in from the cold, California wines generally had all the cachet of bathtub gin. Frank and a growing number of quality proponents preached the varietal system to foster consistency and to encourage high standards, quality over quantity. They also pressed for recognition of defined grape-growing regions. Eventually, that vision led to demanding California wine standards and to the biggest wine boom in history. Frank Schoonmaker is one of the reasons our wine racks are filled now with Napa Zinfandels and Carneros Chardonnays and Rutherford Cabernet Sauvignons and Atlas Peak Pinot Noirs and dozens more high-quality wines. Today, even the Europeans are adopting the practice, identifying wine varietals on their labels. So, by now maybe you've noticed all those picture book vineyards stretching from hilltop to hilltop. Maybe you've even sampled a few of the local products. How many varietals do you suppose they represent? 8? 10? 20? Try closer to 70. I'll spare us both the full list of California varietals, otherwise I'd have to pronounce names like Mourvedre and Tokay Friulano and Valgin, Vadengi. Oh, never mind. But more familiar to most of you may be the main varietals of Napa Valley. In case you have to pose as an undercover wine expert, here's a quick briefing on some of the most important grapes in the valley. Cabernet Sauvignon, the grape behind the biggest superstar of all California wines. Napa is best known for its Cabernets, but the grape first gained fame in the French Bordeaux region, particularly in the Haute-Médoc. It was introduced to Napa area vineyards in the late Gold Rush era, thereafter proving that under the golden sun of the Golden State, gold really does grow on vines. Chardonnay, one of the great champagne grapes and star of white wine racks everywhere. In the white wine boom of the 1970s, this grape produced what quickly became and is still the most popular white wine from California. Chardonnay is not a sunbather like the Cabernet. It relishes fog and cool mountain breezes, so its vineyards tend to be concentrated down valley and upslope in the hills and mountainsides. Merlot, a hearty fruit producing what some regard as the Rodney Dangerfield of red wines. I get no respect. Though often in the shadows of cousin Cabernet, Merlot gets more respect than it used to. For years, California winemakers were uncertain whether to use Merlot as a blending ingredient or as the star of its own varietal. Some of that ambivalence may linger, but Merlot acreage is growing, and it's always been among the top grapes of Bordeaux, one of the most popular in France. So, could it be that Merlot is really the Jerry Lewis of wines? Sangiovese, the grape that made Chianti famous. Though an unsuccessful migrant to California wine country more than a century ago, the Sangiovese wines from Tuscany have returned to critical praise. Their triumphant comeback is also encouraging fresh anticipation that more Italian grapes may follow the Sangioveses to Napa. Mama, we're going to Napa! Sauvignon Blanc, the number 2 billing in white wines. In the face of Chardonnay's immense popularity, this light, grassy wine might have disappeared from the market, its grapes added to endangered species lists, but for the marketing genius of winemaker Robert Mondavi. First, he tinkered with the recipe, making a slightly drier version of Sauvignon Blanc wine. Then he did something Hollywood especially can appreciate. He changed the name. Just as Archibald Leach became Cary Grant, Sauvignon Blanc became Fumé Blanc, and sales soared. Consequently, Sauvignon Blanc grapes still play strong roles in valley vineyards today. And to a grape, they'd probably tell you that Mondavi kid deserves the Lifetime Achievement Award. Pinot Noir. Some call it the heartbreak grape. The wine is versatile and sophisticated, but oh so temperamental. So many things can go wrong between the vine and the glass. So many things beyond control of the grower or the winemaker. So many opportunities for disappointment. A writer once called Pinot Noir the perfect wine for worriers, since it offers so many things to fret over at every stage. But when everything works, when Mother Nature smiles and the winery alchemy is blessed, the result is pure Pinot magic. The kind of wine Robert Louis Stevenson called bottled poetry. Zinfandel. That's the legendary grape with a mysterious past. You won't find Zinfandel listed among the noble grapes of Europe. Its parentage is unknown, its genetic lineage uncertain. Some say it came from New England. Some think it might be Italian, related to the Primitivo grape. Someone even suggested it may have originated in outer space, maybe hitchhiked on board a meteor. Say, which way to the Reds planet? But origins hardly matter anyway. This grape without pedigree produces wines without inhibitions. Indeed, Zinfandel may be the ultimate American immigrant, judged not by where it comes from, but only by how hard it works and how well it performs. Call it the Horatio Alger of American wines. Now, before we go on gathering winery intelligence, this reminder. If anyone asks, our password is, that's right, Varietals. Yogi's Way, Mount Veeder or Yountville? It was that great American League philosopher Yogi Berra who told us, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. Well, here's your chance. Continuing our tour north from the Oak Knoll region, choices have to be made, quandaries addressed, to stay along Highway 29 through Yountville, or to veer westward toward the hills of Mayacamas and Mount Veeder. Let me help you make your decision just a little more difficult. You don't want to miss the Mount Veeder region. Great wines, great vistas, great art collections. But you don't want to miss the Yountville route either. Great wines, great history, great bubbles? Yes, my favorite kind of bubbles. Très magnifique bubbles. As I promised, we're getting close to the winery that goes with all those champagne grapes we saw back in the Carneros district. That's right, the winery of Domaine Chandon, California relations of the Dom Perignon family. Here, French owner Moet et Chandon produces some of the finest sparkling wines anywhere. But don't take my word for it. The tasting room is open. Tours also take visitors through the entire process that turns out 500,000 cases of sparkling wine every year. 500,000. Just think what goes with all those bubbles. All the smiles, the joys, the celebrations, all just waiting for a great pop to bubble over. And there's more. At Domaine Chandon on California Drive, there's also a small wine museum and a gourmet restaurant that's among the very best in California. For a nearby smaller operation, just east into the Stag's Leap region, you might try the family-owned winery of S. Anderson on Yountville Cross Road. It too specializes in sparkling wines. And there are other wineries to consider in Yountville. For example, there's Cosentino on Highway 29, specializing in French-style blends and an expanded line of Italian-style wines. And the intimate micro-winery Goose Cross Cellars on State Lane, designed as an old English farm estate, with rose garden. Finally, there's the winery that isn't. It's no longer a winery, but it's still a prominent landmark. The old Grosinger Winery on Highway 29 in downtown Yountville has been converted to Vintage 1870, a complex of shops and restaurants. It's also a famous face in television, the facade familiar to those who used to watch Falcon Crest. The restaurant offerings are worth a Yountville stop too. The highly acclaimed French Laundry on Washington Street may not be able to seat you until late, as in sometime late in the 21st century. C'est très populaire. Bouchon, also on Washington, is a French country bistro, and Bricks on Highway 29 blends Asian and California cuisine. Of course, maybe you took Yogi's Fork and plunged west instead. In that case, you veered off to the winding roads along the Mayacamas Range, sometimes called the Hills of the Morning Light. This is where steep, east-facing hillside vineyards receive dawn's earliest light, where the mountain ridge divides Napa and Sonoma counties. Mount Veeder, namesake for this wine region, is the tallest peak. Vistas can be breathtaking, especially if someone drives too close to the view. I suggest that everyone help the driver through this neighborhood. On the southern slopes of Mount Veeder is the surprising Hess Collection, a winery and art gallery of equal appeal on Redwood Road. The ivy-covered winery dates back to 1903 and was the former home of the Christian Brothers Mont La Salle winery. The unique self-tour features 2 floors of museum-quality European and American art, collected by Swiss-American businessman Donald Hess. As they might say in a Hollywood pitch meeting, it's fine art meets vine art. Further up Mount Wieder Road, high above the morning fog, is Chateau Potel, the winery of Jean-Noël and Marquette Formeau, official wine tasters for the French government before they visited California. But hey, how you gonna get them back to Paris after they seen Napa? The couple stayed. They named Chateau Potel after the family's 900-year-old castle in France. Also in the area is Mayacamas Vineyards and Winery on La Coya Road, perched on the dome of an extinct volcano. Its ownership roots go back to the 1880s when a San Francisco pickle tycoon built the Old Stone Winery. Tours and tastings are by appointment, weekdays only. Now, back to the highway, but let's stay alert for more silverware in the road. To every season. Making wine is like raising children. Whether awake or asleep, vines and kids are constantly growing, developing, and in need of constant oversight. In Napa Valley, the nanny of the vineyards is the viticulturist, Mother Nature's helper whatever the season. Winter is bedtime. And just like kids going to bed on a full stomach, healthy vines like to go into their winter dormancy loaded with carbohydrates. It will help them wake up full of sap and vigor come spring. The viticulturist helps. One way is by pruning. Winter tourists may think the vineyards appear dead, row upon skeletal row of gnarled stumps. But pruning has prepared the vines for spring, regulating how many clusters will develop. Consider it a botanical form of family planning. The vineyards sleep under blankets of wild mustard that turn the hills a dazzling yellow early in the year. The annual Mustard Festival, from February to April, pays tribute to this colorful flower that also protects the vineyards from harmful erosion during winter rains. Spring arrives with bud break, usually in March. The silent appearance of vine buds is as demanding as a bedside alarm without a snooze button. It's time to get the vines ready. Like the morning scramble to get kids out the door in time for school, it can't be ignored, put off, or rescheduled. Again, the nanny helps. The young shoots are positioned for the future. Plant by plant, they're draped over trellis wires strung along the vine rows. Then, they're ready for summer. Summertime is not vacation time in the vineyards. The long, warm days when grapes mature and ripen put maximum stress on the vines, much like the pressures of parenthood during those critical formative years. One way the viticulturist helps is pulling leaves, giving that shaggy vine a haircut. The practical goal in the vineyard is to allow more sunlight to reach the grapes and to improve air circulation, to avoid mildew in their little gym socks. Another viticulturist duty is shoot thinning. It involves giving the parent vines a break by clipping off some of the burdensome brother and sister grape clusters. Now, all I can say is, don't try this at home. Fall is glorious graduation time. The fruit is what it will be. No more training, no more nurturing. It's time to test its ripeness, its sugar and tannin levels, its physical maturity. Then the harvest, the reaping of what's been sown. They call harvest here the crush. The vines have done their job, the grapes are in the crushers. Nothing more the proud viticulturist can do but wait to see how many of those lovingly nurtured clusters turn up in great varietals. Of course, once they've left the vineyard, they never write. They never call. Oh, but they were such a beautiful bunch. Here's the pitch. We got a classic American tale here. It's set in the wine country, see? We start with an immigrant family, a strong-willed Italian patriarch. He builds a winery empire. His 2 competitive sons operate the family business. One brother is mild-mannered, conservative. He makes his mama proud. The other is brash. He's daring. He makes his mama nervous. And then, here's the twist. The old man dies. Pow! Sibling rivalry goes ballistic. Before long, it's a wine war. A wine war. Don't you love it? 2 brawling brothers trying to run the family winery in opposite directions. Pow! They come to blows. Bam! It's like Rocky meets the Blues Brothers. Oh yeah, it's a soap opera, but on an epic scale. I mean, it's Gone with the Wind meets All My Children. And hey, here's what we call it. You ready for this? It's great. It's The Grapes of Wrath. Don't you love it? Mama's torn, but she sides with the mild-mannered baby brother. That leaves the flamboyant one out on his patootie. But here's the next twist. The losing sibling starts his own company, a grand, in-your-face winery. Like I told you, he's the brash one. And he's more than a success. He goes on to pioneer new ways of winemaking, new ways of marketing, and helps inspire a national wine boom. In the end, it's the ousted brother who makes the family name a giant of the wine world. But baby brother prospers too. Big finish, and they all live wealthily ever after. Can you see it? I tell you, De Niro, Stallone, they'd kill for those roles. We go for Coppola to direct, can't miss, total blockbuster, and here's the big twist, the coup de grace, our Grapes of Wrath, is all true. Well, blockbuster or not, that is, in fact, the basic story behind one of Napa Valley's most colorful families, the clan of Cesare and Rosa Mondavi. It was eldest son Robert Mondavi, that's the brash one, who changed the landscape of Napa Valley with his new California mission-style winery some 40 years ago. The Robert Mondavi Winery is still a prominent presence in the wine world and on Highway 29 in the Oakville region. Don't miss your turn. The winery offers one of the most comprehensive tours available in the wine country, from vineyard to wine rack. As for the younger brother's winery, Charles Krug, it's a little further up the road. I'll let you know when we get closer to St. Helena. But while we're in the Oakville district, there's more to see, and that includes more Mondavi. Just up Highway 29, little more than a grape's throw away, is Opus 1, a joint development of Robert Mondavi and Baron Philippe de Rothschild. The winery building looks like a cross between a Mayan temple and an alien space station. The tasting fee is slightly less than the cost of a NASA moonshot, but what a ride! The tasting, I mean. To the west, up Oakville Grade Road, is La Famiglia di Robert Mondavi, the winery formerly known as Vichon. It specializes in Italian-style wines, including Sangiovese, and offers great views and picnic tables. Picnics can be one of the grand pleasures of a wine country tour. The Oakville Grocery on Highway 29 has all the fixings in an old country store setting. To the east, Plumpjack Winery on Oakville Crossroad operates out of a main winery building completed in 1883. It specializes in Cabernet Sauvignon. Also on Oakville Crossroad is Silver Oaks Cellars, a Cabernet-only winery. Some of its older vintages periodically are released exclusively at the winery. The Napa Wine Company, back on Highway 29, is a custom crush operation, serving about 60 boutique wineries, among them La Sirena, Paul Meyer, and Fraser. Fraser, that's a nice name.